forces to police the situation in the country's east. That's according to his latest statement. And for more on that, let's cross to Murat Gazdiev in eastern Ukraine. Murat, what did Petro Poroshenko actually have to say on this?
Well, he urged the Security Council of Ukraine to consider asking for UN peacekeepers. He says he discussed the issue with the other leaders of the Normandy Four, the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, the leaders of France and Germany, who also took part in the Minsk talks. He says he talked about that, fearing that the would not be kept, that they would fail, that the ceasefire would not. Surprisingly, he played a bit of a blame game, now foregoing completely calling the anti-government fighters terrorists as they do, or terrorists or separatists, now just calling them plain outright Russians, which being here, I can tell you, isn't going down well with the fighters here. Many, I've been to Donetsk airport, I've been to various front lines, and many have a very thick, let's say, Ukrainian accent. It's unmistakable, really, and whenever he calls them Russians, it doesn't go down so well here in eastern Ukraine. But he also said, regarding the Debaltseve pocket, where many of the ceasefire violations are taking place, he said that 2,500 Ukrainian troops have apparently retreated, left, along with 200 pieces of armor. He says that the anti-government fighters issued an ultimatum saying that if the Ukrainians left behind their arms, if the Ukrainian troops laid down their weapons, they would be allowed to leave unharmed. He says that they didn't take that ultimatum, they didn't accept it, and left anyway. He also said, by the way, that perhaps as an alternative to the UN peacekeeper mission, the best scenario for Ukraine would be if there was a European armed troop, perhaps police mission here in eastern Ukraine to oversee and enforce the ceasefire.
So that's the Ukrainian president's point of view. What about the anti-government forces? What's their take on the situation?
Well, it's much the same. You know, we have two completely opposite views. What we are sure of is that the way the anti-government forces here in eastern Ukraine and the way Kiev see things, even in the Debaltseve pocket, are entirely different. Their points of view are opposite, are polar opposites. In fact, in Debaltseve, President Poroshenko says that Ukrainian troops are carrying out a withdrawal, an organized withdrawal. The anti-government forces, on the other hand, say they're surrounded. Those soldiers, thousands of them, are surrounded in that pocket, something that has been verified by various journalists, by various analysts. But he says, President Poroshenko again says, that they are pulling out, with their weapons, with their armor. The anti-government forces say no such thing is happening, that they're stopping any attempt to break out or break in to the pocket, that the Ukrainian troops are entirely surrounded. And their situation, by the way, is apparently desperate. Those Ukrainian troops inside that pocket apparently are out of ammunition, they're low on food, they've got nothing to fight back with, and they've apparently even been abandoned by their officers and commanders who have fled the Debaltseve pocket, and many of them are surrendering. The anti-government forces say, hundreds have chosen to lay down their arms. They say if more want to leave, they're free to do so. They can lay down their arms, leave behind their tanks, and they're free to cross the front lines unmolested. They're free to surrender if they will. So that's the situation in Debaltseve. On the front as a whole, though, the situation is much calmer. There are much fewer violations. In fact, even heavy weaponry, according to the OSCE, they've verified this, is being drawn back, is being pulled back by anti-government forces near Lugansk, for example. And they say they'll pull back even more as the situation stabilizes. So very different views on what's happening, and it's difficult to make out the truth.
On the ground in East Ukraine, for us with the update, Murat Gazdiev.